going? We'll get started in a few minutes. Thank you.
Okay, great. We'll be like, here's all the acronyms and what they mean. Yeah. I know, the first roundtable meeting, I was just like, I don't know what any of this is. Yeah.
I meant to bring snacks to our first meeting back, and then my mom's in the hospital.
Yeah. Like I ran for office. I'm not. Why would anyone expect me to know any of these things? Okay, great.
Oh, perfect. And
Yeah.
walked down
Like,
from
great.
the Senate to one of the council members in Santa Clara, and I've never been there during it. And we went to the Martin Luther King Memorial, and it's golly, it had been raining out there, it had been as cold as here, and actually very similar. But that day was chilly. I should have had one more jacket. Yeah. But yeah. You know, I've been there all different times. I've never been there during the worst of the humidity. Somehow I've never. And I'm sure I much prefer cold with the humidity. My ex was from Nebraska, Minnesota, and usually we go out with the family at Christmas time, you know, at baptism time. One time we're out there in the summer, and I'm like, where's the air conditioning? Yeah, I mean, it just knocks you. I did not know that about that. Makes me even further. Love Denali. I've only been to Montreal here in the spring. You couldn't quite get up there because it was beautiful. Yeah. I'm not as familiar with Quorum. I'm looking at South City, so the incidents all
You
over.
guys also have a council meeting right before this, or is that just
Hi, everyone. Welcome. On Zoom, member Sandy Alvarez, I am attempting to promote you to panelist if you can hear us. And just really quick before we kick off the meeting, member Cecilia Taylor and member Sandy Alvarez, just want to make sure you guys can both accept to be panelists. And Christian.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the SFO Community Roundtable. I would like to call to order the Wednesday, April 6, 2023 SFO Airport Community Roundtable at 7:06 p.m. We are meeting in a hybrid session, both in person at the Melbourne Public Library meeting room and remotely via Zoom. Join us today are staff to the Roundtable, Kathleen Wentworth, Roundtable Coordinator, Angela Montez, Roundtable Administrative Secretary, Jean Reindell, Aviation Technical Consultant from HMMH Group. Ms. Wentworth, would you please let us know who else is participating with us and should be recognized?
In person with us tonight is Doug Yakel from San Francisco Airport, and next to him is Nupur Singha, the Director of Planning, Construction, and
Environmental Affairs.
Environment. Thank you. I don't see anyone else. Angela, do you have someone on Zoom, some people on Zoom for us?
FAA, we have Carlette Young and Joseph Burt. And from San Mateo County, we do have Linda Wolin from Supervisor Dave Pine's office, as well as Lisa Ozaza, Deputy Planning Director. And from SFO, we have Paul Hanna, Christian Valdez, and we also have support from Janeth Lujan from Planning and Building. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen and Angela. We are very happy to welcome back our members in person this evening for the first time in about 3 years. Great to see all of you here, really. And welcome everybody who's joining us in person as well as via Zoom. As a reminder, tonight's meeting will have a hybrid access with members attending in person and the public welcome to attend either in person or remotely. For those attending remotely, we continue to use the enhanced Zoom features. We will periodically screen share the names of the attendees. The list of names will display the name, but not the email addresses, entered by each person when signing in to the Zoom meeting. With that, Ms. Wentworth, we're going to move on to roll call, please.
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office. City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission.
Ivar Sataro, good evening.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. CCAC Airport Land Use Commission. Here. Town of Atherton.
Here.
Town of Belmont. City of Brisbane. City of Burlingame. Town of Colma. City of Daly City. City of East Palo Alto. No. City of Foster City.
Sam Hindi.
City of Half Moon Bay. Town of Hillsborough. City of Menlo Park.
Cecilia Taylor present and will be in person momentarily.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. City of Millbrae.
Ann Schneider present, and welcome, and thank you all, and thank you to staff.
We had a leak in our Chakoti room, which is our emergency operations center, so it had to be repaired, necessitating a move. So staff, thank you so much. There were a few kerfluffles along the way, but welcome to Millbrae, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor Schneider. And going back for just a minute to City of Burlingame.
Ricardo Ortiz here, present. Hardy
And,
would present.
and continuing down, City of Pacifica.
Christine Bowles here.
Town of Portola Valley. City of Redwood City.
Present.
City of San Bruno.
Here.
City of San Carlos. City of San Mateo. City of South San Francisco. Town of Woodside. Thank you. I get 13 here in person. We have 13 for a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. So before I start the meeting, I would like to do some land acknowledgement and acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all the peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, I recognize we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. I wish to pay my respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community, past, present, and future, and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. Thank you for indulging in me into this land acknowledgement. With that, moving on to public comments for items that are not on the agenda. Staff will note any written comments and allow members of the public to speak. Ms. Montes, at this point, will share the list of attendees, please, while you advise the public how they may participate during public comment.
Hindi, for those attending the meeting in person, please submit your speaker slips located by the entrance to me. If you're attending on the Zoom video conference, we will use the raise hand feature in order to organize any public comments during the general public comment periods. I will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raise hand feature to speak on that agenda item. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. When you hear your name called, I will prompt you to unmute your microphone and inform you that you may begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes. And I do have one hand raised, thank you, from, actually, first we will take, okay, so I will first call on Darlene Yapley. Janeth, if you can help me with the timer, please. Ms. Yapley?
Good evening. I was hoping the topic of single noise event reporting for GBAS would be on the TWG agenda, but the meeting was canceled. It is not on today's agenda. At the February 1st Roundtable meeting, Member Taylor requested that single noise reporting be added to the TWG meeting. Chair Hindi stated he would get back to Member Taylor. SFO is committed to decommission any GBAS approaches that create more noise than non-GBAS approaches. This provides Roundtable and non-Roundtable affected communities assurance that GBAS will not result in higher noise and requires noise monitoring and reporting. However, the insurance is without value, zero, if there's no minimum data reporting to answer, is GBAS creating more noise or not? Minimum data is a game changer because without it, we will not be able to tell if there's more noise or not. This roundtable motion passed on April 6, 2022, quote, added criteria that would include both average and single events with reports rendered on a regular basis. SFO will report averages and a list of single noise events for GLS. SFO is not, however, planning to compare single noise events for GLS and non-GLS approaches. Without single event comparisons, we cannot tell if there is a noise louder or not because we're reporting averages and this is insufficient. You can have average rainfall below historical norms but still experience flooding issues. Averages can mask problems. On the United test flights, the average indicated that GLS approaches were less noisy, but that was not true for all flights. Some GLS approaches were much louder. SFO is not planning minimum data reporting to know whether it's more noise or not. They're not complying with the motion. Please take action and make it a TWG agenda item. Thank you.
Dapley. I will now call on Sue Degree.
Good evening. Thank you, members and public, for being here. I read the minutes and I was disappointed, and I'm very concerned that minutes are very skimpy. So there's quite a few board members, cities missing, and also for members of the public to try to find out, the meat of the matter of what's going on. The minutes just do not give you enough unless I missed some button that explains more. But to say so-and-so said such and such, period, that's just not enough. So I hope you reconsider the minutes and let them be more full so we can understand what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on Mark Scholl.
I also have a comment on the minutes. I'd like to address how they're recorded. The public puts a lot of work into succinct and informed comments, but the minutes essentially list only the subject, not the point being made by public speakers. For example, my comment that the GBAS landing system cannot fix the huge and well-documented over-energy problems that resulted from Circuit 3 redesign were recorded in the minutes as, quote, Mark Scholl of Palo Alto commented on beyond scope items on GBAS GLS. That does not describe what I said, and the tone seems dismissive. You might say I'm being too sensitive, but I don't think so. This is consistent with the dismissiveness contained in the public record provided by San Mateo County, which document how Palo Alto's attempt to join the Roundtable was really handled last year. Since then, there have been some changes, perhaps with the intention to try to tone down the heat. But summarizing our comments as simply beyond scope without even relaying what they were doesn't help. Thank you.
And that is the last virtual hand from Zoom, but we do have one speaker in the audience, and that is Mr. Ken Miles from the city of Pacifica. Right over here. By the podium.
I'm Ken Miles. I lived in Pacifica for 45 years, and it was a very nice and quiet place. I love the ocean. I love the quiet. But over the years, starting about 10 years ago, all the time, flights right over the garden, over the hills, vibrating through the valleys, going through the little valley I live in, Valleymar, over to Rockaway, part of Lindemar. And it's still going on. And I've been coming to these meetings before, but I just dropped out. But I decided I had enough. I'm going to come in here and tell you what I think. I used to be a FDA investigator about 30 years, and I did inspections of medical device companies and also worked with FEMA on emergency response exercises. So I had quite an experience with federal agencies and how they operate. And we were a regulatory agency, and I kind of wonder about FAA. Is it a regulatory agency? Or is it a promoting agency? Is it a research agency? I don't know. I never hear about anybody getting fined or penalized. I'm talking about the airlines or the pilots for some of the actions they had. And we have near misses right on the tarmac here in the SFO. And we've been trying to keep the airplanes up and away from the civilian areas, the residential areas, and it hasn't stopped. So I'd like to see, and I read a lot of excellent material you have, but I don't see much in the way of what regulatory actions that you enforce, and publish it. Let the public know. And then we know what you're doing. Because a lot of people are going partially insane just because they can't get sleep. And it also leads to mental health issues with some other people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mark.
And with that, Chairman, we have no further hands raised for this item.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Montes. Moving on to next item on the agenda, which is consider setting the agenda and taking action on consent agenda items. Ms. Montes, do we have any public comments on items 1, 2, or 3?
We did not receive any speaker slips for anyone wishing to speak in person, and we do not have any virtual hands raised for this item.
Okay, thank you very much. So before I go to entertain a motion, I did receive a request from Member Schneider to pull item number 2, the director report. You have questions on ANIM?
I have
could explain that during their staff report, then I'm happy to vote the report as it is. It's at your call.
Okay.
I too had wanted to pull the director's report just for a quick comment on the director's report itself. And so if it is a consent item, I don't think it would be summarized by the staff. So perhaps we could pull it for just a brief comment.
Absolutely, no problem. Okay, anyone else would like to pull an item on the consent? Okay, seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to set the agenda and approve the consent agenda absent the director report.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I got a motion by Member Ortiz, seconded by Member Schneider. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. I don't have the count. What, how many we have? (15-0-0). Okay, thank you. Okay, to the director report, would we like staff report, Ms. O'Connell, or would you like to ask your question?
So maybe staff can address it after I ask my question.
Okay.
I want to thank Bert and his team for having the ANEEM numbers in the director's reports. I think it really gives a lot of information to us about how the noise events are being recorded, and that there are traditionally about double the amount of noise events exceedances that have been reported under the new system versus the old, looking at the data. The other thing I wanted to point out was that, excuse me, since before the pandemic, looking back at the numbers, we typically have the same amount of exceedances in January and February for noise as we did pre-pandemic. And from my understanding, we're having less flights, more people in the flights, but less flights themselves. So I think we're trending in the wrong direction, and this could be that it is just because of the terrible weather we had in January and February, and so it's an anomaly. But if it's, I think with the new ANEEM numbers, we're going to be able to see that a little more clearly, whether it's trending to louder planes and more disturbances, or if it's not. And so I think that it's going to be important to be looking at those directors' reports and see how we can get the exceedance number down. Even with the new flight patterns that they're trying to use, we're still getting a lot of exceedances. So that's what I wanted to say, and that with ANEEM, I think it's a good progress where the public and this body can have more faith in the numbers and know that loud events are being counted. So thank you. Those are my comments, and we'll take it from there.
I wanted to thank you for your questions. So the best way to answer that. So when we look at the number of exceedances going up, that is just where ANEEM was able to do a better match than noise power distance was. But as far as the CNEL value or the ANEEM value, if you look, many times they're very close to each other, if not the same. And the reason for that is, if you think of it, I know we've explained it before during Noise 101, and you're about to get it again, so hold on tight. The loudest event during the night will oftentimes drive your noise contour for the day or your CNEL value for the day. So you could have one event at night that's really loud, pushes the CNEL to where it is, and you could have a few hundred during the day that are very low, and they don't really register. So that's where the interesting thing about ANEEM comes in. So it doesn't have a threshold. It picks one as it works through it, and it will oftentimes find those super duper quiet events. So finding the wheat for the wheat for the chaff as it goes through, and that's why the number of exceedances goes up.
Justify the numbers with you in this format.
That's fine, but just as a broad sweep, that's an answer.
I understand. Thank you.
And
Any other question,
Member Schneider?
Member Schneider?
I think it's exciting, and thank you, staff, for these. It's going to take us a while to look at the numbers and figure out what it actually means. When I look at these and I compare noise events from ANOMS versus ANEM, in some cases, like Burlingame, you're 11 times higher in one of your monitors. For one of mine, it goes from 11 to 154. And yet, none of these are within the noise contour. So ultimately, I think if maybe we'll add to the ground-based noise, we can't do it for Friday's agenda, but we can do it for the next, is dive into what this really means in terms of noise contours and in terms of insulation programs. Otherwise, I think I
can
look at
actually
these.
answer that right now. It doesn't.
In which
It's
case,
not recognized by
what
the
we're
federal
going to need
government.
for those numbers is to get to the legislative committee and say exactly what we expect to put into the FAA work plan for their reauthorization. Because clearly, if noise exceedances are above 65 decibels on an average, all of these locations should be within a noise contour, in my very simplistic elected official way, but also because I live through this noise all night long. So I think we need to do a much deeper dive, and it's not on the agenda tonight, but if we can come back for the next one and really see what this means. But later on, I'm going to give a brief report of what happened in Washington in terms of FAA reauthorization, and we need to be getting our ducks in a row. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it warrants a conversation about ANEM, so we all understand how the measurements are happening and how those are really reflective of what is going on. So perhaps we'll put that on a future agenda, and we'll have all a good discussion about it. Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else got any questions on this topic? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
These generated by city or by zip code? Because Colma does not have its own zip code. It's actually shared by South City and Daly City.
I'll accept onus for that one. We have a fixed report, and we need to make sure that Colma's in there. So I apologize for that, but yeah, we can go ahead and do that.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? For those of us who are new, we're still really lost in trying to read this information. I know there's a Noise 101 coming up soon, I think. Can you give us a little bit more information about that and how that will be run? I mean, I'm having a hard time answering my constituents' questions. And
No problem at all. You're always welcome to call me. If you have any questions, call me. I'll be happy to talk to you. I'll spend all the time you need.
Okay.
But with the roundtable, we are going to arrange soon to have a Noise 101. Most of the members who've been through it, nod if you agree, it's worthwhile. You learn quite a bit. It is a bit of a fire hose treatment, and many of the members have come back from many classes. Mr. Adiego, would you agree?
Yeah, and
Roger that. Thank you.
And ANEM is quite new for all of us. It's a new measuring metrics that's the reason we will be bringing that back in, and for all of us to get a better understanding of it as well.
So is there a date yet, or
Not
is
yet,
this
no.
something you're sorting?
It'll be coming very soon.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve the director report item number 2 on the consent agenda. O'Connor. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. I got a motion by Member O'Connor, seconded by Member Ortiz to approve item number 2, the director report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Persons,
Okay.
so the vote was 14-0-0.
1400. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Item number 4, which is review technical working group recommendation to initiate process to research and investigate potential implementation of Roundtable GBAS suggestions 4, 5, and 6. As you recall, the SFO GBAS team has previously reported on status of the 10 GBAS concepts submitted by the Roundtable. 3 of those concepts were not accepted for processing by the GBAS team for various reasons. Tonight, Jean Reindell from HMMH and technical consultant to the Roundtable will review those 3 concepts with some possible options. Just a reminder, tonight we are not actually asking you to authorize any of these options. The purpose of this item is to provide direction to staff to have conversations and obtain information from FAA and other stakeholders and other resources and to develop initial plans for the most promising option. This is not an open checkbook. Any of this would be well within our currently authorized budget, and staff would report back if additional budget is required. In any event, we will ask staff to report back to us periodically as options may develop. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Reindell. Oh, Mr. Ganong?
We do have Paul Hanna available. We'd spoken earlier about the possibility of a very brief update on what GBAS is for the new members, if it would help before Jean speaks.
That would be wonderful. I think if that's the case, let me take Mr. Hanna first, and then I will take Mr. Reindell. So this
Very
way,
good.
at least we'll bring a little bit of it. Mr. Hanna, are you with us, ready to go?
Yes, I am. Can everybody hear me okay?
Well, thank you for making yourself available. That's valuable for all of us, and especially for those who are new to the Roundtable. Please go ahead and proceed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time as always. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully folks can see the presentation that I've got on the screen share right now. Just to confirm, can you all see what I've got on the screen right now?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We've had several occasions over the past couple of years, I think, to speak both with the full Roundtable and numerous occasions, I think, to work with the technical working group supporting the Roundtable to discuss the GBAS project, and recognizing that there are a lot of new members that have joined the Roundtable. We thought this might be a great opportunity just to refresh folks' memory and maybe reintroduce the ground-based augmentation system here at San Francisco. So just a couple slides and I'll get out of the way and we can get back to Gene and his important update here. So when you hear us talk about this thing that we refer to as a GBAS, we are talking about a navigational aid that is located at the airport. And GBAS, GBAS, stands for the Ground-Based Augmentation System. This is, as I mentioned, it's actually quite small. It's just a couple of antennas that are installed in this little bump out right here on the airport. And what it does is it sends out a broadcast to aircraft that are flying into the San Francisco International Airport. And when those aircraft receive that broadcast, it enhances the accuracy of their GPS navigation capabilities. So it takes the kind of awareness of the aircraft and the flight crew about where they are on the Earth, and it takes it from something that we would measure in maybe hundreds of meters, and it brings it down into centimeters. So it really creates this very precise understanding of where the aircraft is relative to the runways here at San Francisco. And what it enables us to do with this navigational aid is create all sorts of very innovative and complex flight paths that bring us into the airport, some of which we can use to create redundant procedures to the ILSs, or the instrument landing systems. Those are the systems that have been on the airport for a very long time. The ILSs, as an example, I think it's 1920s technology. The first one was introduced here in the United States in the 1940s. They work very well, but they're very fixed in what they can do. And the ground-based augmentation system that makes that GPS navigation capability much more accurate enables us to get the same level of precision as an ILS, but we can look for higher paths that are often more quiet for aircraft to come into the runway. We can also kind of explore other opportunities to connect GPS navigation into those paths, because here at San Francisco, our two runways are so close together, if you're either landing on the 28s or if you're landing on the 19s, that it's critical for aircraft to have that kind of precision knowledge about where they are to make sure that they actually land on the runways, even when two of them are coming in at the same time. So the ground-based augmentation system and the GBAS, you'll hear us say that a lot, we can actually generate 48 of these procedures. A typical ILS on the airport can support 1, maybe 2 approach procedures per nav aid. So 48 is a huge improvement, and it gives us lots of opportunities to achieve project goals that we'll talk about here in a moment. And the area that we have to explore with those GBAS procedures, generally it's within an area of about 23 nautical miles around the airport. The idea being that the GBAS works best because we know exactly where it was installed on the airport. So we have very precise understanding of where that nav aid is, and that's part of how it's broadcasting out the corrections. But that means that our corrections only work in a local area. So that's the 23 miles around the airport. Technically speaking, though, it's only about 10 nautical miles today where we're able to get really creative with the GBAS itself. And right now, not every airplane that comes into San Francisco can use the GBAS. So today it's about 30% of the aircraft that come into the airport, but that number is rapidly increasing. And in the next 5 to 10 years, we expect that number to approach 50% and potentially pass that as we get into the end of the 2020s here. This nav aid is a little bit unique in the fact that it is called a non-federal nav aid, which means that the airport purchased the nav aid, not the FAA. So this is owned by the airport, it is operated by the airport, and the airport has taken those steps because we have 4 important goals we want to achieve by essentially purchasing and operating the nav aid. Number 1 is to reduce the noise impact to the community. And the idea is, there aren't a lot of opportunities left to make significant noise reduction in the Bay Area without looking for very unique and innovative concepts to kind of explore. And the ground-based augmentation system, we hope, is one of those opportunities to find those noise reduction opportunities and develop these GLS procedures that lower noise, and in other cases, ensure that the noise doesn't increase anymore in the future for additional aircraft that come in. Our second goal is to create redundancy to those very old nav aids that are on the airport. Again, that's the instrument landing system, or the ILS. They've been out there for a long time. They're proven to work under all weather conditions, but they have some limitations because of their age, including the concept that you can't rely always on an ILS in good weather conditions. So some of the safety benefits of an ILS only start coming into effect when the weather starts to get bad. Ground-based augmentation systems produce the same level of benefit 24/7, 365. So we can take advantage of their precision paths all the time. Our third goal is to enhance efficiency. And when we use the term efficiency, we're talking about things like reducing fuel usage, reducing track miles that are flown to get into the airport, and reducing emissions. And the last thing we have as part of our goals is to reduce delays into the airport. One of the key things that you do not see on this list is expanding or growing the capacity of the airport. And there's several technical reasons for why that's not our goal here, but the main reason is it's because a ground-based augmentation system cannot increase the total number of flights that come into the airport on a day-to-day basis. All we can do is hope to reduce the delays that sometimes occur when we get into bad weather situations, or when we get into these very unusual weather conditions like we did in January and February. The highest number of flights that can come into the airport at the same time happens under visual conditions when the weather is perfect. And the GBAS cannot increase that number any further. So again, these are our 4 goals. And to achieve these 4 goals, we have a strategic vision of how to get there. And this is what we've been working through collaboratively with the Roundtable and the technical working groups supporting the Roundtable. Right now, we're in the very first phase on the far left, which we call gaining experience. And gaining experience with the GBAS means that we are using identical procedures to the ones that already exist. So we're not really looking at any noise advantages. We're not looking at any efficiency. We have GLS approaches that are identical to the ILS approaches because all of our aviation stakeholders need to learn how to use and operate this nav aid. This is the first time the San Francisco International Airport has ever owned and operated a nav aid. This is the first time in the Bay Area that our air traffic stakeholders have ever had to work with these kinds of approaches that come with the GBAS. So we need it to be identical so everybody has that level of confidence about where the planes are going to be. Our next phase, which is just under development with the FAA right now, is what we call our Group 1, the first group of innovative approach procedures. And these are the procedures that give us some opportunities to start picking away at our project goals, like noise reduction and ILS redundancy, efficiency, and reducing delays. And I'm not going to spend time tonight talking about that, but if anybody's interested in what those procedures look like, you can go to noise.flysfo.com and check out what those look like and how they're being developed right now by the FAA. We are currently in this middle phase right here, where in particular, this phase called Innovate and Improve, which is Group 2A. This is our opportunity to look at some approach procedures which previously could not have been done, either because they didn't meet the current design criteria that the FAA sets forth for ground-based augmentation systems, or because we needed to look at procedures that could only be used under limited periods of time, like late at night, when certainly nobody wants to be disturbed by aircraft noise, but we needed to, those procedures need different kind of separation that can't be used in the daytime. So that's some of the concepts we're looking at right now in 2A. We also have far more innovative concepts that we're looking forward to exploring and implementing, but several of them require investments that the airport alone cannot undertake. And so you'll see this gray bar right here that says Air Traffic Control Tower Staffing and Technology. What that means is there's additional investment that needs to be made beyond the airport. And once those investments are made, we're going to be right there with this modern technology to take advantage of it and continue going after our goals. The two key pieces on the bottom here are equally important, though. One is measure. You've already heard some comments tonight about the airport's commitment to not only look for and work with the FAA to implement these innovative GOS procedures, but to measure them and make sure that they are achieving our project goals. We're going to be doing that through portable noise monitor deployments and making that information available to the public with our noise monitoring reports that will be coming out. And we also are looking forward to collaborating not only with industry and airline and FAA stakeholders, but also with you to get your feedback on which of these innovative procedures are the right ones to take forward with the FAA. That timeline is shown right here, kind of at a very high level. So again, we are in the phase right now where we have these overlays. These are identical procedures to what exists right now. The next thing that's happening is the first group of innovative procedures are currently being developed by the FAA. That batch is going to come out on the 30th of November this year. As soon as they come out, our portable noise monitors hit the field and we start collecting data about the aircraft and how they're flying those procedures. And we're going to bring that back to all of you to review and get feedback about do the calculated noise models match what people's experiences on the ground are. And as I mentioned before, we're just starting our process to look at the Group 2A procedures, which is this orange block right here. And this is critically important for us. We want your feedback, both as members of the Roundtable and residents of the Bay Area in general, to pick which are the best ideas to take forward and have the FAA implement with us. Implementation of a procedure doesn't mean that it's past environmental. The FAA still has to do its own environmental analysis, which is the NEPA process. That is technically still ongoing right now, even for the first group of innovative procedures. And only after we've been through this year, the entire year, trying to gather information from this group and from residents of the Bay Area, will we be able to identify those approaches to pass to the FAA for them to then begin their formal NEPA analysis to look at the noise possibility and determine if what the best method is to bring that procedure forward for use. The last line I have very quickly is just to say, for those of you that are interested in joining us on Friday for the technical working group, we do have a lot of information that has actually just been released tonight, as a matter of fact. So this group of 2A CFPPs, that's a community flight procedure package. Those have gone up on the website already. This Friday, we were hoping to have our detailed population information and interactive noise contours. Those are maps you can explore. They are up now. So if you go to noise.flysfo.com, you can see that information. And then a little bit later this month, we are going to be providing interactive effective population information. So that's what I wanted to share for now. I really appreciate the time tonight, and I'll turn things over to others there in the room. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hanna, for this brief yet very informative primer on GBAS. And, if note that the SFO is doing this on their own, and this is a project that SFO really being one of the innovators, if you will, and using this technology. So thank you for doing that, Director Sotero and SFO team, and Paul, your team, for doing all that you have been doing. Any members have any questions for Mr. Hanna on what he had just presented or GBAS in general? Yes, Member Aiken.
When was GBAS installed?
Great question. So the GBAS here in San Francisco, we actually just hit our 1-year anniversary. I'm really excited to announce. So the GBAS was installed over the last couple of years through the pandemic, which was its own level of challenge. It officially went live in March of 2022. So at this point, we are now 1 year into our first year of the overlay GLS approaches. GBASs in general in the United States were installed starting in the early 2000s, with the first public GBAS approaches available at the Newark Liberty International Airport, starting I think in 2014 is when that one was fully publicly available.
That was my other question. How many other airports in the U.S. or the world, or percentage-wise, have this?
Great question. So in the United States, the number at the moment is relatively low, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but I won't get into all of them. So right now in the United States, the main airports with a publicly available GBAS, or ground-based augmentation system, is Newark Liberty, Houston George Bush Intercontinental, and the San Francisco International Airport. In the next 2 years, John F. Kennedy International Airport and LaGuardia, both in New York, are going to be getting their GBASs as well. So that'll bring the total number of U.S. airports up to 5. Internationally, there are hundreds of ground-based augmentation systems in use. And what's very interesting, and you'll see more of this, I think, as we get our noise reports coming out when we show more information about who is flying GLS approaches, is we have almost as many international operators that come into San Francisco that are already using the GLS overlay approaches as we do domestic operators. Because for an international operator like Qantas or Lufthansa or China Airlines, flying GLS approaches is extremely common throughout the world. It's the US who have just been a little bit slower to adopt it. And partly, as Chair Hindi mentioned, is because right now, airports that want to take this innovative step, they have to purchase that nav aid themselves, and they have to operate it themselves. And San Francisco wanted to take that action as well to try to achieve our goals.
Thank you.
I think I heard you say that 30% of planes are able to use GBAS currently. And of course, the more planes that are using it, the better the data will be. What are plans to incentivize airlines to equip planes with this technology?
That's an excellent question. So I think there's, and maybe I'm going to interpret your question in 2 different ways. At the moment, kind of emerging technologies or growing technologies sometimes have incentivization plans that the FAA themselves put forward. One good example of this would be the wide area augmentation system, which led to a type of approach called LPV, or Localizer Performance with Vertical Guidance. Sorry, it's a little bit technical, but there was a big initiative that the FAA undertook to incentivize aircraft operators of all varieties, from general aviation through the airlines, to equip WAS receivers. It came along with the ADSB, automatic dependence surveillance broadcast technology. So those 2 initiatives were incentivized by the FAA, and they went broadly to all aircraft operators. They spent billions of dollars doing this. It was very successful, and it has consumed a lot of the FAA's attention over the last couple of years because of its utility. GBAS has not had that kind of federal level incentivization to this time. The FAA kind of has to pick their battles about which technology they want to push. LPV had benefits to thousands and thousands of airports. Ground-based augmentation systems have benefits to airports like San Francisco, of which there's maybe 30 to 50 of them in the United States. So there is not a federal incentivization program. So there's nothing of that level. On the airport-specific level, there is kind of an overarching goal for all operators that come into the airport to reduce the noise that they produce to whatever level they can. And part of that is an outcome of this roundtable and the noise abatement office there with Bert, where the airport draws attention to aircraft operators that do particularly well with our noise abatement goals, of which these GLS procedures are going to be a very high priority if they are measured and found to truly achieve our goals, of which noise reduction is one. So we're not going to promote aircraft flying a GLS approach that doesn't reduce noise. We're going to make sure we find those and push them forward. So the overarching incentive for air carriers that come to San Francisco to show that they're being proactive in the noise realm, I think always exists. Other incentives are being explored, and I defer to Bert or Nupur or Ivar if there's other things that they want to add on that question.
Anyone else has any question for Mr. Hanna? Yes, Ms. Boyd.
You talked in terms of the schedule about innovative approach procedures, but what about departure procedures?
So these are just, I really enjoy coming to this roundtable because the questions are fantastic, and this is just so much fun. So there is a concept which has been put forth for the ground-based augmentation system to be used for departures. At the moment, the FAA does not have any criteria for that, but I can share that some of the airlines that participate in, we have what's called a flight procedures subcommittee, where it's a number of technical stakeholders, FAA, airlines, aircraft manufacturers, Honeywell, where we all meet to look at the technical validity of requests that come from the community or ideas from our airline partners or our air traffic partners where they want to explore innovative concepts. And some of our stakeholders in that subcommittee have asked that we explore GBAS-based departures, but at this point there is no criteria for it. So it's kind of on our long-range radar, and I would say if you had to put it on a timeline, it would be in our Group 3 style timeline, which is closer to kind of like the 2028 or 2030 timeframe.
Okay. Any more questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Hanna, for, again, being with us today and for this presentation. Thank you. Mr. Reindale, are you ready to go? Thank you for your patience.
You're welcome. And yes, I think I'm ready. You hear me and you see the screen okay?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Now even better.
All right. So the roundtable asked that I look at the GBAS procedures that were recommended by the roundtable, for which I believe there were 6, and really look at those that aren't being put forward through the GBAS team at this time. And so this slide here shows all 6, and you can see there's multiple, so there's actually more than 6 total, I think, but these 6 overall procedures were recommended by the roundtable through the technical working group, where they reviewed these and moved them forward, and the roundtables approved going forward with them. The ones in yellow are the ones that I've been asked tonight to provide some possible next steps of what to do now that these procedures aren't moving forward at this time through the SFO GBAS team. And so I just have these 3 slides of those 3 procedures. And the first procedure was that was recommended by the roundtable was to create a new arrival concept.
Could you repeat that? Do a what?
I'm sorry, to review these procedures. So the first one is the first that's not being proceeded with at this time is this procedure shown here on the right, which was to create a new arrival concept to sequence additional aircraft over the Pacific Ocean prior to arriving on runways 19 left and right. And you can see the green arrows there is the idea for to move the red tracks and put them into the green arrow spaces. The GBAS team response was that it was beyond the scope of the GBAS project, and that the roundtable could potentially pursue this through the FAA or wait on Mars. And Mars is a multiple airport route separation tool that does not currently exist yet, which is intended to deconflict operations with closely spaced airports such as San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose. So the possible next steps on this one is that the roundtable could decide to do nothing since it was outside the scope of the GBAS team, or proceed to suggest the FAA review this concept through the technical working group and determine feasibility outside of the GBAS project. I do want to note that doing so may still require the Mars tool that doesn't exist yet. So it could be that the FAA just comes back and says we need to wait on this tool to be available, but it's not a foregone conclusion at this time. So anyway, so the two steps is do nothing or push it to the FAA to see if we could implement this procedure outside of GBAS. The next one that was proposed and not moving forward by the roundtable or by the GBAS team was to move the southeast SFO arrivals to share the arrival stream into Oakland Airport. And and you can see that in the lower right screen there, how you would join that arrival stream. This also apparently is beyond the scope of the GBAS project, and the team suggested to pursue through the FAA. So again, possible next steps is to do nothing since it was outside of the GBAS scope of work, or also suggest the FAA review this concept and determine feasibility outside of the GBAS project. And so this concept is to allow SFO rivals to move from the Surfer Star to the EMSO Star and create a link to the existing 28 right arrivals, arrival RNAV, or some similar concept. And that's what you put through to the FAA is say, this is an idea we came up with, maybe there's something similar that can work as well. And then the third one was the dual offset approaches to keep arrivals further northeast over the bay, as you see there in the blue and green arrival streams there. The GBAS team response was they're not pursuing due to safety issues, possibly revisit this after FAA evaluations of simultaneous approach operations have been completed, because they are doing evaluations for such simultaneous approach operations. So possible next steps, do nothing since these safety issues were cited by the GBAS team, or put on hold until the FAA has completed its ongoing evaluation of simultaneous approach operations, and then resubmit to the GBAS team. The last slide here is really intended as a reminder of kind of the process for recommending new procedures to the FAA. We have gone over this in the past, but I thought it was worth a reminder since that could be a possible next step for those one or more of those three procedures that are not proceeding through the GBAS team at this time. So first, the FAA works with the Roundtable's technical working group to preliminary assess feasibility. If deemed feasible, San Francisco and or the Roundtable places the proposed change onto the FAA's IFP gateway. And then it gets into the FAA's queue. So they then complete a feasibility assessment. If technically feasible, the FAA proceeds to design and operational feasibility. If design is operationally feasible, FAA reviews the procedure design with San Francisco and the Roundtable. If San Francisco and the Roundtable have no objections with the design, the FAA completes the environmental review under NEPA. And then if the design is environmentally feasible, FAA continues to the final development and implementation. And I want to remind folks that currently the entire process takes 2 to 3, and I put plus years, because I know there's still a huge backlog in the FAA's procedure design. And currently, I think the average is around 2.5 to 3 years, but that could go up as they continue to get more and more requests for new procedures. And with that, I will turn it back to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Reindale. And before going to public comment, and then I'll come back to the members for questions and discussion, I just want to remind the members that this presentation, this slideshow, has been emailed by Angela this afternoon. So if you were having a hard time following on that little screen, it is available for you. Hopefully you got a chance to take a look at it, and you can still look at it as well now. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open it to public comment. Ms. Montes, do we have anyone who would like to speak on this item?
Thank you, Chairman. We did not receive any speaker slips from anyone wishing to speak in person. And we do have 2 virtual hands raised from members on Zoom. So I will first call on Mark Scholl, followed by Mary Jo Fremont. Mr. Scholl?
Thank you. I have noticed that on the NAC priorities, which are the priorities, FAA priorities for the entire country, the Mars implementation and SFO is fairly far up there. And one of the things that I would like to point out, though, is it's only on the 19s. It would be very, very beneficial if Mars were used to allow airplanes flying over the bay into Oakland and San Francisco to be closer, which is what it would allow them to do, and better use the bay for noise abatement than today. Also, I do have a question, though. Do we know how to identify what procedure a plane is using? Whether it's using GLS, whether it's RNAV, ILS, whatever. I think that's a big issue that really needs to be dealt with fairly quickly, because if we don't know whether it's better, worse, whatever. On the other thing I noticed, certainly it's great if you can move the surfer traffic to in line with the Oakland arrivals, which is technically possible. It's just not being done. In the past, it was something the FAA actually was working on. But I would also say that, you could really improve surfer very simply by addressing the well-known over-energy issues that are on it now. That doesn't require years. It just requires, some tweaks. It obviously has the problems. Those were shown in all of the tests done for GLS. It's certainly noticeable in the very, very large percentage of flights that have to use speed brakes over the mid-peninsula. And, so let's work on, maybe getting a few singles rather than just focusing on the home runs. Thank you.
We will now call on Mary Jo Fremont.
Thank you and good evening. I and other non-Roundtable community residents would like to understand the SFO schedule and process before SFO submits anything to the FAA this year. Last year, the Group 1 submission to the FAA in early April were a surprise for non-RT communities. On April 6, 2022, the Roundtable recommended some Group 1 approaches to submit to the FAA. Then SFO submitted them right away without contacting non-RT communities to ask for formal input. We learned about the submissions on April 25th. So to avoid any surprises, here are my questions. For the Group 2 approaches, is November 2023 still the deadline for comments before any potential submission to the FAA in December? And if not, what's the new deadline? And would this prevent SFO from submitting additional proposals in December? Another question. Are submitted comments considered in the review process? Are they made public? For example, last December, Darlene Yapley and I sent feedback to the Roundtable and the SFO team on the Roundtable concepts, which included the 3 CFPP proposals. However, our comments were never mentioned at the TWG and RT meetings in January and February by any RT member or SFO member. And last question, when deciding to submit proposal to the FAA, will SFO consider input from affected non-Roundtable communities equally as important as the input from the Roundtable? Hopefully, SFO can address this question in the TWG meeting on Friday, given that the only agenda item is a review of Group 2A approaches. And I will email my questions after this meeting to the Roundtable and SFO to prevent any miscommunication. Thank you.
Fremont. And Chairman, we do not have any further hands raised for this item, but I would like to note that staff did circulate a written public comment from Jennifer Landisman, and it was also posted to the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Montes, for that, and thank you for the speakers. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our members' discussions and questions. To Mr. Hanna. I'm sorry, Mr. Reindel. Any questions on the presentation? Okay, so basically what we're trying to do today is kind of get your input as to how do we proceed with those three procedures. Shall we, the options as presented, basically do nothing, or instruct staff, direct staff to work with the FAA and the stakeholders to come up with ideas on how to pursue those procedures? That's really the topic before us today. Any comments? From my perspective, if you want me, oh, please, Member Taylor.
Andy, my question is, with the amount of time that will pass, 2.5 to 3 years, I want to suggest procedure 5, but in 3 years, I'm just thinking about quality of life, so I'm not sure how to really answer the question. Just concerned just about the time.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question.
So, with the, if we are recommending the next steps to be for the FAA to look at it, and the delay time, it sounds like it's between 2.5 to 3 years. So at that time period, I'm thinking that's 2026, realistically. So it's hard for me to answer that question because of the time delay. So if it was 12 months, I could say definitely do the next step. But because of the time delay, I'm just concerned.
Understood. And unfortunate part, I mean, I share your concerns about the time frame. The unfortunate part, it is not in our purview and in our hands. It's the FAA, that's how they move. And that's the only option we have if we want to pursue them. The GBAS team had mentioned that it's not in their purview and they cannot do anything. My humble opinion that will be, if we're able to accomplish one, if not all three of these suggestions, that there will be a positive impact on noise reduction to the communities that are these procedures are being flown over. I would like to see it done faster, absolutely. But if this is not within our means, this is a process, unfortunately, with the federal government and the FAA, the agency here. That's our only option. So do we take the slower than what we would like approach, or we take nothing? I think those are the two options.
Okay, thank you, Chair Andy.
Absolutely. No, thank you for raising that, because we are dealing with issues that are very important to our constituents. We want to bring relief yesterday rather than today, if we can, and today rather than tomorrow. And listening and hearing that the process takes years is frustrating for me too. But again, these are the constraints that we have to work with. I don't know, Kathleen, do you have anything to add?
I just wanted to point out that although these processes that we're talking about tonight, these three particular ones, probably have to do with a very formal process with the FAA that does take an extensive amount of time. That's absolutely true. But if we were to start on the preliminaries for these, that isn't to say that we don't do anything else. We don't put everything else on pause and just work on these three. We continue with our day-to-day work and our day-to-day work on finding incremental changes and incremental improvements while we simultaneously work on these longer-term projects. So it's not, I mean, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, I promise you.
No, thanks, Kathleen, for this clarification, very important. Maybe I guess I took it as given that we will continue our work, whatever else is doing, but we're talking specifically for these three, and that will be simultaneously with everything else that's gone. Thanks, Kathleen, for clarification. Yes.
I would think that we would want to at least proceed with the items that the FAA has not deemed a security or a safety risk, and concentrate on those two procedures that aren't considered a safety risk, and work on it as much as we can within our budget and what our budget allows to be able to work on a process going forward. We know we're not going to get overnight results. We never do.
Yes.
But if we're not trying, then we're not doing anything. So I would think that we should, to our extent that we're able to within our budget, work on finding a common ground that might work with the FAA.
Thank you.
Mr.
Member
Chair-
Ortiz, yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I think I missed part of the conversation. My understanding is we were reviewing these procedures because they were the GBAS procedures, and now there says that they're outside of the GBAS scope. So somehow this procedure, I thought, was proposed through the GBAS process, and now it's outside of it. So I'm a little confused. If I could get a little clarification on that.
Sure, I'm going to let the GBAS team perhaps respond to that. I do have my own response, but let the GBAS speak for themselves.
Sorry, I can maybe take that one. So I apologize if I'm jumping in out of order, but the three suggested procedures that, so these were the procedures suggested by the Roundtable. Excellent suggestions, all of them. The three of them that Jean was just presenting on, they are, they're either just a little bit outside of our current scope. And as I mentioned kind of in the quick overview of the GBAS, much of what we're working on for the GBAS project here at San Francisco International Airport is about approaches, not necessarily arrivals, and not departures, not yet. That's a bit more futuristic, but we're going to try to get there. So the one of the suggestions, well, two of the suggestions technically were a little bit more oriented towards arrival procedures and not necessarily approach procedures. And that's why our subcommittee, when we brought these recommended procedures back, the feedback we got from the subcommittee was this is kind of beyond the scope of what the subcommittee can work on right now, the GBAS project team subcommittee. But there's always the opportunity for the Roundtable to work directly with the FAA to seek these things out. The last one, which is the kind of a new path for two aircraft to come in over the water and then kind of align to come in on the runways at the same time. There's an active kind of safety challenge that the FAA is working through right now, that they are trying, they're trying to resolve this at other airports. And, you know, because of that challenge, our flight procedures subcommittee specifically, we're waiting for those recommendations ourselves to be identified and for those to be put in design criteria before we try to go forward with that kind of suggestion. So that's why that last suggestion is beyond our purview. So kind of like a little bit more arrivals oriented and not approach oriented for 4 and 5. And then the sixth one is we're waiting on the FAA to find the best recommendations. Then we're going to look at that one again.
That answer the question? Gone down? Okay.
Did I miss it? Oh, I'm so sorry if I missed it.
No, that's fine. Kathleen, would you like to follow up?
Yes, Mr. Hanna, with regard to your last statement that the FAA is actively working on this particular safety challenge now, if hypothetically they were to solve their safety problem and issue some regulations next week, would we be able to have the GBAS committee reassess that number 6 in a sooner time frame?
Yes. I think that is a fair statement, that if the FAA were to, you know, at the point at which the FAA is able to, you know, kind of isolate the problem and then come up with tangible design criteria that can be applied here for the GBAS project, it will come back up with the subcommittee. Your suggestion, which was an excellent one, was not actually the first time we've gotten that suggestion or something very similar to the suggestion. We've gotten suggestion from residents in the Bay Area, specifically, I think from residents in Palo Alto to explore something similar a couple of years ago. So that has been on our radar to kind of explore this. The safety challenge has existed for that long. So I can't say that it's going to get resolved tomorrow, but we are hopeful that the FAA will find great solutions that we can apply and maybe look at as if it's this year, it would come to the subcommittee for exploration as a 2A procedure. If it's not this year, then we would circle back and look at it as potentially as a 2B procedure.
Okay, so make sure that I understand this correctly too now. So if the safety issue is cleared with the FAA, then that becomes within the scope of the GBAS team? Okay, thank you. That's we're talking about suggestion number 6, the dual approach, dual offset approach. Okay. Anybody else got any question? Okay, so I'm looking for direction from the members as how to direct staff to pursue those suggestions.
Maybe I can ask a question real quick.
Sure, Mr. Sotero, Director Sotero.
Paul, it's Ivar. Do you believe that with these suggestions, does it distract resources from the FAA that then, some things that are a higher priority for our roundtable don't get done more quickly? Does this take resources that would otherwise benefit us under more impactful alternatives of the GBAS?
That is an excellent question. So my initial thought, so if we set number 6 aside just for a moment, because 6 is being worked on by a separate group of people. So we just look at number 4 and 5, 4 being the suggestion to look for kind of a new arrival procedure that takes aircraft more around San Francisco downtown and in the water, and number 5, which is to see if you can reutilize the Oakland arrivals. The key stakeholders in both situations are a branch of the FAA stakeholders that is actually not part of our flight procedures subcommittee today, and that's the center, Oakland Center. So this main question in this particular case would be directed to a group of FAA technical subject matter experts that are actually not engaged in the GBAS process. So I think 4 and 5, at least for now, might not divide our scarce resource availability to look at the GLS procedures. More so true for 5 than for number 4.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Any directions, motion? I'm looking for motion basically to give staff direction to pursue this. And I know Member O'Connell mentioned leave 6 alone. Is that what you suggested?
Yes, I suggest that, yes.
Okay. So anyone else has any comments?
I'm sorry.
Wouldn't this be more addressed in our work plan for the upcoming work plan that we'd be working on as far as where we could allocate staff resources and meeting schedule to delve into this? Or is this something that we'd be directing our consultants to work on to try to hammer out some details and figure out which way to approach?
Let me have staff, my understanding, staff has mentioned that these are not going to be taking a lot of resources, but let me have staff speak for themselves if we were to pursue these currently. I mean, are you looking, because I mentioned, I saw in the staff report, it says that you're not opening books at this point. You're not looking for additional finances to pursue those. How do you see that?
Depending on what the membership would like to see happen, I think I would anticipate that we would start out perhaps with a meeting or two with the FAA locally to see if there's some traction that can be gained there, or if there's just a big concrete wall. And then to take it from there, and certainly our consultants will play a key role, and at least researching, getting some ideas on where we can start on some of these things. They're multifaceted, and we just need to kind of delve into it a little bit. But yes, the consultants will play a huge role.
Yeah.
And we are under budget, as you could tell from the budget attached. We are under budget for our consultant time for this year, significantly under.
So we do have the
So
financial resources.
we've got quite a cushion still left.
With that, I would make a motion for us to proceed with exploring these opportunities and moving forward with staff to investigate with the FAA what the possibilities would be.
Okay, thank you.
And to be clear, that's on 4 and 5, but not 6.
Yes.
6, you're saying we would put aside?
I would put aside because FAA has already said it's a safety concern, and so we should work on lower, not
possible.
Very good, I would second that.
Not reaching for the stars on all of them and maybe concentrate on the 2, 4, and 5 at this time.
Okay, I got a motion by Member O'Connor, second by Member Ortiz. I do have comment from Member Schneider.
In terms of budget, you're saying that we're under budget on consulting services, but where are we in terms of your time and Angela's time? Because we're already unable to have the legislative committee meetings that we should be having at a time when the FAA reauthorization is going. We're not having ground-based noise meetings the way we had prior to COVID. So those processes are going very, very slow. Will you be able to handle, now we're adding something new like we did 2 years ago on that. So I'm concerned about our ongoing actions that have never really been able to take off.
Please, go ahead.
Aside from the last 2 weeks, which has been a tremendous challenge to staff, we have had to cancel 2 of our subcommittee meetings due to extreme weather. And we're now playing a little bit of catch-up, so we are, at the moment, a little bit swamped. Yes, I think there's no doubt that we can compartmentalize and handle that. And I think the amount of time is going to be low because it's mostly just doing preliminary questions to the FAA and to the other stakeholders. It's not going to require a lot of time at our meetings. It's going to be a little bit of information gathering from the FAA primarily.
I would like to support this. To the new members, as the chair of ground-based noise, which is another term we use for basically the noise from airplanes on departure, and to the close-in communities, a lot of new terminology on there. What had happened a few years ago at the request of Palo Alto, our work plan was put on hold to investigate adding Palo Alto to the Roundtable. And we had just completed a spectral modeling study on that, and it's been 2 years now, and we're still trying to get our wings back, still trying to get moving on that. So I'm really hesitant to, unless I really appreciate, Kathleen, you saying that we've got the bandwidth for it, and I'm going to hold us accountable for that. Because right now, the Legislative Committee cannot meet until July, according to the meeting schedule. And the FAA reauthorization is moving right now, likely to be happening between now and July. So we need the flexibility for our staff. Maybe not our consultants, but definitely our staff. If we need to call an emergency meeting on legislation to speak for us, then we've got to be able to do that. And I've already been through this, being spread too thin on this.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, and I have no doubt in my mind that if legislative subcommittee need an emergency meeting, that we could accommodate and staff will accommodate that. But I think what's also very important to note is that this is really, at this point, is going to be exploratory with the FAA, kind of see where this would go, if it could go anywhere, number one. Number two, just as important is staff going to be reporting regularly on this. So we're not going to be telling staff today, go explore these ideas, see how it go with the FAA, and then they're going to disappear for a year and come back. Going to be regular update for all of us, and we could at any time reevaluate and see where are we and what we need to do forward. I hope that gives you a little bit of comfort and reassurance that staff will be, accountable and, looking for all that info. Yeah.
Function of how much time.
Yeah, no, understood.
And clearly, having to cancel 2 meetings because trees were falling was a lot more time.
Understood.
So we had to do it.
So I can't speak to the work plan was put on hold. I wasn't in the chair position when Palo Alto was being considered to be whether to join the SFO roundtable or not. But anyways, COVID really was the biggest impact on all of us, as you know. That kind of changed everything for all of us. So hopefully here we are on our first meeting in person, that we could get back on track and get back to firing on all cylinders, if you will. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, Member Akin.
I just have a clarifying question so I have it clear in my mind. So my understanding is that, I guess we're calling them 4 and 5. My understanding is that those were beyond the scope of GBAS. So what is it we'd be exploring if it's beyond the scope? Would we be saying, GBAS, expand your scope? Or I'm not quite sure. If it's beyond their scope, they're not, if I could just.
Sure. You want to answer that? Go ahead.
That's a great question. The airspace is subject to a number of different types of procedures, different ways for the airplanes to move through the airspace to get to the airport. If it's a beautiful visual day, we actually look at the airport, we align ourselves with the runway, we land, we don't need hardly any instrumentation. You get some clouds in here, you need a different kind of instrumentation, which is long-standing type at the airport. And then now we have new technology that's giving us new options with GBAS. But those, I don't want to call them older, but the established approaches, technology, the established technology that exists is still going to exist for quite some time. And those are the procedures that we will be looking at in 4 and 5. They're unrelated to GBAS. GBAS is probably not the best use of them because a GBAS, and Paul's going to jump on and correct me, I believe, extends out about 20 miles from the airport. And the one that goes over to Oakland and down has segments of it that go beyond that 20 miles. So there's technical reasons why it goes too far out. But we don't need GBAS. We can do this procedure using established technology that's here today, used every single day. So that's the one that brings the surfer arrivals from, say, Los Angeles to, instead of go up over Palo Alto, they would be going up I-5 and heading sort of towards Oakland, and then we pull them off that and hang them over the bay to San Francisco. Technology exists. We could do that.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you both. Anyone else? So we got a motion.
Move the needle instead of just kind of talking and talking and talking, so.
Thank you. Okay, so we got a motion by Member O'Connell, second by Member Ortiz. All those, any more discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries 14-0-0. Thank you. Thank you, very robust discussion, and thank you, Mr. Hanna, and thank you, Mr. Reindel, for your presentation, both of you. Thank you. Okay, moving on to presentation, item number 5. And before I go, just a reminder to the public that public comments on any of the items under presentation will be taken after the last presentation. Mr. Reindel, our technical consultant to the SFO Roundtable, will provide us an update on activities of interest at other airports or roundtables and how they may be helpful to our activities. Mr. Reindel, back to you again.
Okay, give me just a second. Technical difficulty here. Yeah. That should do it. Okay, are you seeing the full screen again? And
yes,
can
we
you
are.
hear me okay? Okay. So at the last roundtable meeting, I believe, or maybe the one before that, but roundtable did ask me to provide regular updates of activities at other roundtables that were in the know of, that we have some information on. So at the previous meeting, I went over those other roundtables and kind of talked about how they were established, what their purposes are, and relatively similarities to the San Francisco roundtable. So please go back and look at those. I'm not going to say what each of these roundtables, how they came to be and those sorts of things anymore. What I'm going to do is just provide updates on what some of them have done since I last provided an update. And so the first one here is Broward County Aviation Department, their Airport Noise Abatement Committee, known as ANAC. And they are in existence for the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport in Florida. They just did an NCP, or Noise Compatibility Program, update there under the Part 150 regulation. And the ANAC is expecting the FAA to provide the record of approval very soon for that, so they can see what measures in that are going to actually be approved. And also, ANAC is continuing to work with the FAA to increase adherence to RNAV procedures. They have several RNAV procedures in place as a result of implementation of a Metroplex there, similar to the Northern California Metroplex here in San Francisco. But they're not getting a lot of compliance or the aircraft flying those RNAV procedures. So they're working with the FAA to see if they can increase more use of those procedures. And then as a result of an ANAC recommendation, Broward County recently implemented a new tracking process for the South Runway nighttime voluntary closure. So now they're actually tracking that much in the way that San Francisco tracks compliance with their measures. Next is the Charlotte Douglas International Airport Community Roundtable, known as the ACR. They are also at Charlotte doing a Part 50 update. It's well underway. ACR actually has 2 members on the technical advisory committee for that Part 50 update, in which they just had their second meeting. And the main impetus for the ACR being on the technical advisory committee is that the FAA requested that 3 of their recommended departure procedures actually be analyzed as part of the Part 150 update. And so the March meeting of that TAC meeting included the 3 ACR recommended departure procedures, but also included additional similar procedures to attempt to disperse aircraft on departure. Now, this is all preliminary recommendations for consideration at this time. There were no evaluations, but the ACR was pleased to see that they are actually moving forward with evaluations of not only the 3 that they recommended, but some other similar procedures as well.
Mr. Rindell?
Yes.
Some of us are wondering what ACR is.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I mentioned that. It's the Charlotte Douglas International Airport Community Roundtable. So the Airport Community Roundtable is known as ACR.
Thank you.
It's their roundtable. Yes. Next is the DC Metroplex BWI, which is in Baltimore. Their community roundtable. The technical working group just met last week with the FAA to discuss their standard instrument departure procedures and their standard terminal arrival routes, which are instrument procedures that they're trying to modify, again, to address issues raised by the communities in this roundtable as a result of their changes to their airspace that occurred a few years ago, just again, similar to San Francisco. According to the FAA, the SIDs, or the Standard Instrument Departures, are ready to move forward, but not the STARS. They're still under development, so the departures are ready, but the arrivals are not. And the roundtable voted for the FAA to move forward with the recommended changes to the departures rather than wait on the arrivals to be developed, which would provide relief sooner to those communities that have issues with departures. And unlike San Francisco, most of the communities have arrivals and departures because they operate a lot in different directions. Anyway, full environmental review still needs to be completed before those departures can be implemented, but the FAA is proceeding to design those departure procedures or implement them. Now moving to the LAX Community Noise Roundtable, just an update, the roundtable members voted to continue meeting virtually for the time being. It was determined that they did not have to comply with the in-person meeting requirements of the Brown Act, since the roundtable is not formed through any action of the LAX Board of Directors or other official entity like that. It was in their bylaws that they would comply with the Brown Act, so they had to modify their bylaws to have a stipulation that they'd still comply with the Brown Act, except for the requirement for in-person. And then also with the LAX Community Noise Roundtable, the technical working group that was formed to determine and evaluate potential alternatives to flight procedures. They're continuing to meet on actually a monthly basis still. I think they're having their fourth meeting, if I remember right, later this month. And an interesting occurrence at the Oakland Airport Community Noise Management Forum, the acting regional administrator for the Western Pacific region, Eric Emmond, introduced himself and stated that the aircraft noise is an extremely important aspect of current FAA focus. According to the acting regional administrator, the FAA has been working on the Noise Policy Review Initiative, or known as their NPR, which provides the agency an opportunity to review and consider updates to long-standing noise policy, taking into account recent research and the findings of that recent research. And as part of their review, he stated that the FAA is reevaluating the primary noise metric of DNL. You know, we use CNEL as a surrogate in California due to our Title 21 being in existence prior to Parkman 50, but then also looking at the significance threshold of the 65 DNL. And then I believe last but not least, San Diego International Airport, their Airport Noise Advisory Committee, also known as ANAC, was reported at their last meeting that the curfew violations calendar year 2022 was higher than 2016, which was one of their highest years, and also higher than 2019, which was, as we all know, the last large operational year around the country before the pandemic. And the violations resulted in a collection of over $800,000. The airport authority is meeting with airlines to stress the importance of the curfew and adherence to the curfew, and have agreed with ANAC that if curfew violations do not decrease in 2023, that the authority will consider increasing the amounts of the penalties for each curfew violation. And also, ANAC is returning to in-person meetings beginning next month. And that's what I have for the updates.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rindell. Any questions for Mr. Rindell?
Question. How is San Diego able to have curfew violations and we've always been told we cannot?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can tell you I hear that at least 6 times a year at various places. And so there was the Airport Noise and Capacity Act of 1990 was passed that basically eliminated the possibility of having curfews, having violations for curfews or noise limits, things like that. However, San Diego had in effect their curfew prior to the passing of that Airport Noise and Capacity Act, known as ANCA, in 1990. So they had the curfew prior to that, and as part of ANCA, airports that had existing curfews and things like that that are now prohibited through the Airport Noise and Capacity Act, they were grandfathered as part of that act. And so there are airports, and there's a few of them in California, such as John Wayne Airport, San Diego, Long Beach, that have curfews and noise limits and things like that. So it's because they were in place prior to 19.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a very good question. So if you're not grandfathered, you cannot get put in a curfew anymore because of Congress legislation, right?
Correct.
Okay, just to make sure. Thank you. Anyone else has any questions or comments to Mr. Rindell's presentation? Seeing none, Member Schneider.
Thank you, Chair. Just because we have so many new members, what you will be seeing, or you might have seen in your packet, is Congresswoman Spear and the Quiet Skies Caucus introduced 8 bills, sadly, in January or February of 2020, and then COVID hit. One of those bills was to give local cities the power to at least start the process of asking for curfews. So that is one of those 8 bills floating out there. I think Kathleen helped with those. You might see them. I would probably say it's probably hopeless for us, but nothing ventured, nothing gained.
No, absolutely. That's a very good point. But, the challenge obviously is going to be on the congressional level, right? You need more than just one champion or 2 or 10 champions. You need a majority to make things happen. Hopefully at one day we will get there. But thank you for bringing that up. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rindell, again. And moving on to item number 6, Chairman Update. Tonight's meeting, as you know, marks our first return in-person meetings after 3 years. Our plan is to continue to offer hybrid meetings for our regular and subcommittee meetings so that while the Roundtables members will be attending in person, the public can have the option of attending in person or via Zoom. Last month, as Kathleen had alluded to, has been really frantic for staff specifically and for all of us who were involved in the subcommittee level. We were very affected by the planned meetings of the ground-based noise that Member Schneider is the chair of, and the technical working group subcommittee with last-minute meeting cancellation due to roadway safety issues and unavailable electricity or internet at the venues. But for us, I think with technical working group, we were almost going to make it, but the safety for our members and those who were going to attend, we don't want anyone to be driving, so we ended up canceling. But with that being said, those 2 canceled subcommittee meetings will be held in back-to-back meetings this Friday, April 7th, in a large, fully equipped conference room at the San Mateo County Building at 455 County Road. Is that correct, Angela? County Center, at the County Government Center. This facility will be able to fully meet our needs for a hybrid meeting. After those 2 recovery meetings are held, the subcommittees will return to other venues with hybrid capability. The ground-based noise will be here in Melbourne at the Charcuterie Room, and the technical working group typically will go to the Foster City Council Chambers Conference Room. Agenda packet for those 2 meetings are posted on the website, www.sforoundtable.org. As you know, tonight's meeting is being held in Melbourne's library meeting room, a new venue for us since our regular meeting happened in the Charcuterie Room across from here, was canceled last week for unexpected roof maintenance after the storm. I need to bear with me a little bit here, but there's a lot of thanks to go around to make this happen, this meeting happen. First and foremost, our Mayor, Ann Schneider, and the City of Melbourne for accommodating us and going extra beyond to make this happen. SFO Director Ivor Sotero and Noise Office Manager Bert Ganong, they offered the SFO facility for us in case this was not available, so thank you so much for doing that. San Mateo County Library Director Anne-Marie Despain and her staff to make us the technology available for us to use this room today and make this meeting happen. And Melbourne Library staff, Roland Tianco, Melbourne Recreation Center Coordinator, Linda Wallen, our Senior Legislative Aide to Supervisor Dave Pine, Deputy County Counsel Lauren Carroll, and many others. But most especially, staff is telling me that Melbourne Community TV, who did a masterful job in the face of multiple challenges, setting up technology for tonight's meeting. Thank you guys in the back for making that happen to us. We appreciate you. And of course, and for me, I know how much Angela and Kathleen and the staff worked so tirelessly. And really, I'm sorry that you had to go through this nonstop pivoting and adjusting and shuttling, but you did a phenomenal job, and this is why we're here tonight. So thank you both for doing everything that you do, and everybody else who helps you in the back of the county as well. Next topic in my report to you would be the FPPC item for Form 700. Just a reminder that the FPPC is still in its final review of the Conflict of Interest Code for the SFO Roundtable. We expect the first set of Form 700 sometime soon, though the exact due date will depend on when we get the final approval from FPPC. As you probably most know, the form was due on the 1st for everything else, every jurisdiction or board that you serve on. But for this one here, we don't know the date yet. Deputy Counsel Lauren Carroll will inform us as soon as she knows the due date. Links to the FPPC resources are located on the Roundtable website, again, sforoundtable.org, under Resources, then California Fair Political Practice Commission. Note that San Francisco Supervisor Safai has resigned as a member of the SFO Roundtable, and the San Francisco Board of Supervisors will review the vacancy and process it accordingly. So we'll see who is going to be replacing Supervisor Safai. We will miss him, and we wish him the best in his other assignment and other boards and committee. Anyone has any questions or comment for my chair report? Yes. Yes, Member Schneider.
If I could give one more shout out to District Director or Linda Wolin, she was instrumental. It turned out when we started having trees falling hours before the GBN meeting, I was in a power failure. In fact, most of Millbrae was in a power failure, but I had Linda's cell phone number, and Linda could contact people because it turns out I didn't have everybody's cell phone number. I serve on Emergency Services Council, so I'm going to be bringing the fact that if we don't have cell phone numbers and we're in a power failure, we can't reach out to everyone. But Linda was both fantastic for that and with the little problem here and moving to the library. So Linda, I don't know if you're with us tonight, but you're my superhero. So
Thank you. Thank you. Very thoughtful of you to say that, and I echo those sentiments. Thank you so much. Okay, anyone else? See none. Moving on to item number 7, Airport Director update with Mr. Sotero. Mr. Sotero.
Thanks, Chair Hindi. A couple things to update on. First, passenger traffic at SFO and the trends. March was a very busy month. We were at about 87% recovered from our pre-COVID numbers. The operations was about 80%, so we still have that trend of more passengers than operations. It's a function, again, of larger aircraft utilizing SFO and higher load factors. We anticipate that trend to continue for probably the next year or two. Airlines are having pilot shortages, as likely you all have heard, and you'll see a number of airlines are actually starting their own academies to try to increase the throughput and training and get pilots in the cockpits. I'll talk about a couple services that are starting up. New service, Condor will resume seasonal service to Frankfurt May 1st, various times. Qantas service 3 times weekly to Sydney on May 22nd, arrives at 6:15 p.m., departs at 10:25 p.m. Air Transat, seasonal service 3 times a week to Montreal, starting May 23rd, arriving 11:25 p.m., departing 6:50 a.m. North Atlantic will launch London Gatwick 3 times a week, arriving 1:25 p.m., departing 3:25 p.m. And then Zip Air launch to Tokyo Narita this summer, start date TBD and frequency TBD. Runway closure, we are under construction of our 1 left, 19 right. That runway is closed. We closed that about, March 27th. Close that. Yeah, March 27th that closed. Our intent is to reopen that runway prior to Memorial Day. We started a lot earlier than we usually do. And unfortunately, in previous years, the rains didn't come, but we've been experiencing a lot of rain. But hopefully we have some dry weather and we can get this done by Memorial Day. Our intent in starting early is just to minimize the amount of delay that happens when we do this into June and July. So we're optimistic the project is on schedule. The folks that experience gap departures will experience more aircraft noise because the 2.8s we're in a straight 2.8 operation. And that's what we're in typically when we have heavy winds from the north. And it does cause some delay. We've been experiencing 15 to 30 minutes of delay as a result of the closure, but very minimal operational delay. Night hush, I want to try to give better results of night hush. And so we're working on the numbers. It's not as easy as it sounds to get to the bottom of the success of night hush. I'll give you just one benchmark tonight that Bert had prepared for me. And prior to night hush, 65% of SFO's departures would fly over water, and currently 76% of our departures fly over water. That is those hours between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. The raw numbers, we will start to hone in on this a bit better and give you raw numbers. What has been the benefit in terms of flight activity? That's something we want to get to. It's a little difficult because it's Oakland and San Jose that typically overfly the peninsula, and there's different routes. Some airlines are opting not to take night hush and using other over-the-water procedures, which is still a good thing. Night hush has forced airlines to think of things and take different procedures that don't go over communities. And so we're moving the needle. We're working on getting you better numbers of actual flight activity. And with that, before I turn it over to Bert, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director, do you have an update on the EIR for the sea level rise?
Maybe I can ask Doug. Do we have a date when that, and our Nipur draft published? Okay. We'll try to hone in that a bit better, but the fall is what we're targeting.
In response to comments given from the public comment period. For the members of the roundtable, what the airport is doing, they've broken up sections of the airport into reaches. I read mainly reach 12 to 16, which are the ones that affect around runway 28. And correct me, but it's a 9-foot wall, 5 foot thick. And there's quite a bit of noise evaluation in the EIR in terms of construction, but not a lot about ongoing or future operations once that wall is in place. So the city of Millbrae has very great concerns. And then Reach 16 is dependent on the close-in communities of Burlingame, Millbrae, and San Bruno doing our own form of sea level rise. So there's some coordination that needs to be done in there.
Seeing none, I will go ahead and turn it over to San Francisco Airport Noise Office Manager, Bert Gennard.
I do apologize, but my presentation just abated me just before we started here, so I apologize for the technical issues. We will turn the presentation over to the roundtable for posting. I do have a few updates on the noise insulation program, and we have some beautiful images this time that we added to it. I'm really disappointed we're not showing them. Wanted to pick out a few things. The repair or replacement initiative, we moved some of the figures from that over to the new expanded eligibility. So you'll notice a decrease in the RRI, replacement initiative, versus the expanded eligibility. For those of you new, aviation, we love acronyms and shortened terms. So yeah, so I have here RRI and SCI and EEI and all those fun things, but repair and replacement initiative. The SCI is a second chance initiative, and the EEI is expanded eligibility. So not that you'll remember it next time, but those are the acronyms that we have here. Anytime you're curious for now, just feel free to ask, please. Happy to tell you. And so nice thing about it, it's the satisfaction rate's going up, the current units and design has gone up. Let's see what else. The current units in construction, we have a 0 there right now. It's because they've been constructed. So there's progress being made, and we're happy to report that. And also the satisfaction rates. I will skip the bar graphs because talking about bar graphs doesn't do a whole lot real for us right now. I will say that the completion of the Second Chance Initiative in the 2022-2026 phase, just for those of you not aware, it is a total budget of $3 million, and it is the FAA grant of $2.4 million that carries the lion's share on that. SFO puts up the $600,000 funds to make it whole. The scope is approximately 19 eligible homes and that have never been treated. And then we also have the pre-construction acoustical tests that were completed for that. And for those of you not aware, FA has many stepping stones that you go through to get there, one of which is an acoustical test to make sure that the home does indeed need to be insulated. They can be inside the contour, and if they go out there and test, they can find that a home is compliant out of the box already without doing anything to it. So just so you know on that one, the reason testing is done. And what they're looking for is interior noise levels that's greater than 45 decibels. The re-insulation program, that's the new initiative we started. Total budget on that one is $12 million. And that one is a $9.6 million FAA grant with $2.4 million of SFO funding. The scope of that would be 80 to 90 homes previously insulated prior to 1993. Just to feed on Director Sadaro's comments about the runway closure, should open before May 25th. Spoke with operations the other day. They said that even with the rains and everything else, they are experiencing good progress, so we are looking forward to that. We did have one way, one right, and 1 left open up during last Tuesday when the rains and the winds were so prevalent. So we closed it early Monday morning, and then promptly on Tuesday reopened it so that they could use it for landing and reduce the delays. The Noise Office website is up, the noise.flysfo.com. The GBAS, we have the community flight procedure packets, as Paul mentioned, they're up online, so you get to see the noise contours and how they would affect. We're requesting that everybody please continue to submit any concepts, verbal, type it out, shoot a picture on the back of a napkin. If you have any skills, you can do it on a computer. sfo.gbas@flysfo.com, please. And then Aneem, I'm supposed to give a little bit of an explanation. I'm going to be very, very brief because it's getting so late. So in the January and February director's reports, you will notice what we have is ANOMS, and that's our Airport Noise and Operations Monitoring System. It's sort of it's very specific to the company, but a NOMS system, Noise and Operations Monitoring, is a very generic term. So within a NOM system, you are trying to correlate a noise event to what caused it. So in other words, we're looking for an airplane flight track nearby, and we try to match the two of them up. If not, we have to use some algorithms and figure out if it's community noise, or we're getting pretty good right now with what we've been doing and the way we listen to them, using headphones. Staff does a fair amount of this, and we get it down to the point where we can actually teach the computer that's wind. And so there's artificial intelligence going on now within our programming. And one of them is ANEEM. And I'm not going to give you the acronym right now, but I'm going to tell you what it does. So in a typical one we discussed earlier, a system is going to match a noise event to a flight track as best as possible. And it will sometimes say, oh, I have multiple out here. What do I do? And so it's up to the human at that point. And it uses what's called a threshold. For a given area, you're going to try to separate out the community noise from the airplane noise. And so you have to put a line in there. That's your threshold. And you try to find it as best as possible when you establish it. ANEEM has some very good mathematics to it, where it comes in armed with what the noise signature of that airplane is, that type of airplane. So if you have a Boeing 737, it says, oh yeah, it looks like this. And so it tries to, within 10 decibels, match what it heard. And if it can do that, even if it's below what you would normally have as a threshold, it will do that. And so what we are looking here in the number of events that we're finding on an increase is typically the fact that these really, really low quiet events are being found by the system. It's not going to drive the CNEL or the decibel level higher, because that's done by your one loud event at night, and that will push your contour or your CNEL level. That's the way a NEM works. And so we've been asked for that for a while now. We've been studying it since about 2016. We finally got it into our system. And it's not totally into our system. We have to use it in a shadow table separately. We're trying to get it fully into our system so that we can look at the events and not just the noise, power, distance events as we have in the past. We are still tracking the non-conforming flights on our night hush. I have a list here that I would normally put up on the screen. I'm not going to read the list to you. I'll let you read that for yourselves, but we are tracking them. And most of them, I want to say, have been air traffic clearance given to use the stick. A lot of them were due to weather. It was just an old clearance, and they just didn't up it, re-update it after the hour. And so what we're trying to do now is work with our tower to see if we can get that alleviated so they don't do that. Through the chair.
Mr. Ganong, and thank you, Mr. Sotero, for your reports. Any question from Mr. Ganong or from Mr. Sotero? Member Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Hindi. And I actually do not have a question for Bert, but since I wasn't here in person just to share this information because there was a public comment, Kathleen, Bert, and I are meeting on Monday to discuss the single event matrix. So I just wanted to share that with the roundtable. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Just in terms of the runway closure, can you tell us what cities are most affected by the changes in flight patterns?
I can. Most of those are the gap cities. So talking about San Bruno, South City, Daly City, Colma, Pacifica. Also Brisbane, and the reason being is the airplanes don't just go straight out. They also do a right turn. And some of those do end up going wide, as Representative O'Connell can tell you. And unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it is right now. We are working with the airlines that we're noticing egregious on that, and we're trying to get them to bring it back in tighter. I've noticed a lot of the pilots are actually doing a fine job.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your report, and I appreciate the name explanation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 8, subcommittee updates. First, we have the technical working group, which I would normally report on. However, as I mentioned earlier, we had to cancel our last meeting. We did not meet due to weather. I again remind you that we will be holding our next meeting this coming Friday, April 7th at 2 p.m. At the county center in Redwood City. Our agenda features a presentation by Mr. Paul Hanna, the SFO consultant and chief airspace and flight operation engineer on the SFO GBAS. His presentation will be about Group 2A, Innovative GLS Review. So encourage all of you to attend if you can. And it's going to be hybrid, so even if you're not in person, you could definitely call in and listen and participate. Any members have any questions for me on the technical working group update, which I gave you not much. Thank you. Moving on to Member Schneider, the Ground-Based Noise Subcommittee Chair. Member Schneider.
Thank you, Chair. As stated, ground-based noise didn't meet, but the purpose that we were going to do, and I'm really glad to have you next to me was, now that the ANEEM report is in, now that we are being able to pick up low-frequency incidents or frequent incidents on that, was to try to figure out where to place some temporary noise monitors. Bert, correct me, there are 4 temporary noise monitors, so we need to go through your committee on that. But to try to pick up what the noise model study, let me start over. The modeling study said that the low-frequency noise from a departing airplane might actually be growing as it moves up the hillsides here in Millbrae, Burlingame, and Hillsborough, and that it may actually be louder at the top of the hill than it might be at the monitor. So for Millbrae's sake, Monitor 8 is located in a city courtyard, very close to where construction's been going on the last 3 years, and then another one is located just slightly up the hill. But we did the modeling study, and now we want to move these monitors around and see if we can try to ground authenticate where the noise might be. And I may not be using the right technical terms, but basically figure out where the noise is, what is it really as loud, and then use that when we go back to the FAA. You would have heard Gene say that San Francisco Airport is almost unique in the United States in that most airports have airplanes taking off all the time in both directions. In our case, most 77%, give or take, of the flights depart on runway 1 left or right. You can tell how quiet it is right now with the runway 1's left. It's usually quite a bit louder, gets much louder after midnight. But 17% or those of those flights actually do take off directly over us or land directly over us. That tends to get averaged out by the FAA. That's another issue. But first, right now, our purpose of our meeting this Friday will be to look at where the modeling study suggests noise might be moving, where we might be able to put these temporary monitors, and try to get some real data on that so we can make data-driven decisions. So hopefully you can join us on Friday on that. So that is it. Chair, I also had a report on legislation, but is Al here to do the legislative committee?
He is not, but he did submit his,
Okay.
it is in the packet.
Tell me when you want me to give you the brief update from what happened at National League of Cities.
Very briefly, because like we mentioned, we will talk about it at the Ledge Committee, so please go right ahead, proceed.
Okay, so I attended the National League of Cities, also Mayor Koo from Palo Alto. They had a series of meetings, transportation and infrastructure, and then what they call the NLC Aviation Roundtable, and then we lobbied. And one of the items that we lobbied for was the FAA authorization. The way, sadly, the items that we gave to our legislators basically said, keep air flight safe, look at the formula for how much an airport can charge per passenger, and please keep an open mind on vertical takeoff and landing and electric pilots. So they seem to be saying, let's be welcoming to all of this new technology. Now at the Aviation Roundtable, I'm there, so of course I'm bringing up the metrics for it, as did the mayor from Palo Alto. And I'm only bringing this up now because Emily Tranter was one of the 2 speakers, the 2 people that NLC brought in. And she said, which both of us kind of looked at each other saying that National League of Cities should not use San Francisco's situation, SFO's situation, to set any kind of policy framework for the FAA on that. And the mayor and I looked at each other saying, what? Because I'll be quite honest, I had thought Millbrae should join noise as an independent as well as our roundtable. And after that, I said no, and the mayor and I talked about that. And I think it's a concern that we need to address with noise. We understand our airport might be different, but that does not change the impact on our residents here. So that's kind of the update. Brittany Kohler is the lobbyist in NLC. I went up to her, there were a series of meetings before we had lobby day, and I said, this is not what we talked about. This is not what I thought we agreed about. And she goes, Ann, don't worry, this is sort of our preliminary. This is what we want the FAA to look at. The specifics will be coming up, and this is why I've been pushing that our legislative committee really needs to dive into this. We need to give very detailed specifics on if we want the metrics to change, and I know the Palo Altans are really good at that, we need to get our act in order for that, and we probably have about 6 weeks.
Very good.
Brittany said it's going to be moving later this spring, but like everything that's legislative, it can move in fits and starts. So, we could lose our opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Schneider, for your update. And for Legislative Committee, Chair Arroyce is not available this evening, and he has prepared a memo that is in your packet. So if you need to read that, please go do so. Anyone has any questions on Member Royce's memo? I'm sorry, and also Member Schneider's report. My apology. So 2 for 1. Ground-based noise, none. Legislative, none. Thank you so much. Moving on. And now I'm going to open the floor to public comments on presentation. Ms. Montes, do we have any public comments on items 6, 7, or 8?
Thank you, Chairman Hindi. We did not receive any speaker slips for anyone wishing to speak in person, but we do have one virtual hand raised from J.P. Walton.
J.P. Wilson, okay.
Yeah, I just had a simple question about, I heard the term gap cities mentioned a couple times, but I didn't know what that was.
This is Bert Ganong with the Aircraft Noise Office. Gap cities refer to the cities through the San Bruno Gap to the west of the airport in line with the runways. And it's referring to the natural swale of the ridge line out there. So there is a bit of a dip. Anyway, that is the cities under that, as I mentioned earlier, South San Francisco, San Bruno, Daly City, Colma, Pacifica.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We have no further hands raised for presentation items.
Thank you, Ms. Montes. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comments on presentation and moving on to item number 9, members, communications, and announcement. Anyone has any? Wow, Member Schneider?
I just want to give a huge shout out to my staff and to the organizers. Yesterday, we dedicated the memorial to the 44 people that died in Pan Am Flight 7 on November 8th, 1957. I was 2 months and 2 days old. And that flight left from San Francisco and crashed in the Pacific Ocean. And what happened from that led to the creation of the Federal Aviation Administration. First of all, I'm sorry for all the families lost. There were families here from all over the world, including as far away as Australia. And now they have a monument. It's right out here in front of our museum. And it was actually a really beautiful experience for some of the children who lost their parents on that flight, that they have a place now to come and they can remember them by. So it was really, really, really beautiful yesterday. The other outcome was it led to the creation of the Federal Aviation Administration. So it was a flight from San Francisco Airport, no fault of the airport. Apparently there are 3 theories of what might have happened to that airplane: bombing, suicide, or just a malfunction, and they've never been able to figure out what the causes were. But a beautiful experience. So if you ever want to come early, it's right there. It truly is really lovely, and it was a community effort. And then I would only say that I attended a Civic Plus event. Christine Bowles was also there. And here's a new concept that I want us to throw out. The example is a brand new huge wind construction and pier being built up in Humboldt County, a rural county. And for this new facility to be built, there will be an EIR, there will be mitigation for all of the detrimental, but what they are looking at is the regional impacts, and are actually looking at community-based benefits for having a large industrial complex that benefits the greater good. So this is the first time I've heard the use of community benefits for that. You could look at SFO as something that serves the greater regional good, although there are a certain number of communities that pay the price on that. So you're going to hear me talking about this more as I delve into this philosophy and this new process that they're looking at for Humboldt County. It's really cool. They're including all the tribes up there. They're including industries. They're including cities that are nowhere immediately close to where this new terminal will be built, but will be impacted by transportation, supply chains, etc. New concept.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else has anything to share with the board? Okay, seeing none, just before we adjourn, just reminding you that our next meeting is on June 7th at 7 p.m. right here in Millbrae. Hopefully, we go back to our regular room. We'll let you know. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Great to see all of you here in person. And again, thank you for everyone who made this meeting possible, folks at MCTV, our staff, everyone else who was involved. Wish you a good night. Apologies for running 15 minutes late. I'll do better next time.